Welcome to Lindamood-Bell Radio. I'm Dave Hungerford. Lindamood-Bell helps students of all ages and abilities learn to their potential. Whether your child needs to catch up or get ahead, our unique, evidence-based instruction can help. We develop the imagery language foundation that's necessary for reading, comprehension, and math. Each student has a personalized plan tailored to their needs, and students attend in person or live online. Either way, our engaging, dynamic instruction helps kids make years of progress in just a few weeks. Learn more and get started at lindamoodbell.com or call us 800-233-1819. Here's today's episode.
My name's Melinda, and I am the mother of 3 gorgeous children, all of whom several years ago we realized were not as excited about reading and learning as we would have liked for them to have been. They all go to an amazing private school, and they had all the advantages that should have allowed them to read freely and be excited about going to school, but it wasn't happening for them. So my husband and I both spoke to some of our friends, and we found this magical place called Lindamood-Bell, and it has changed our lives. Because after an intensive 5-week period during the summer, the kids came home excited every day, sharing stories from the day. And I said magical because after that period, all the kids started picking up books at home without mommy or daddy. So the kids all came home after that 5-week intensive period. And they started noticing books around the house. They started picking them up and reading them and comprehending what they were reading and sharing what they were comprehending and reading. So that pretty much was a game changer for us.
Tell me a little bit about where you're located and what this community is like.
So we live in New Canaan, Connecticut, which is a suburb of New York City. And this is a very aggressive community of overachieving parents and parents who give their children every opportunity for success in life. And it's very competitive. If the children fall behind in school, they feel it. They are discouraged. And so my children definitely needed that extra help and attention that Lindamood-Bell offered. It was a game changer for us.
Were they here in summer or the?
Yes, they started in summer. They started literally the week after school ended. And my husband and I did get a lot of pushback when we told them that, hey, guess what? Your summer break is going to be at Lindamood-Bell. But after the first hour of being at Lindamood-Bell, one of my oldest child turned to me and said, "You know what, Mom? This might actually be the best summer we've ever had."
And so what was their schedule like? Was it?
The children came from 8 until 12 o'clock for 5 weeks. So every day. And we could literally, the way Lindamood-Bell works is there is a checkpoint at the end of each week where a parent comes and is able to see, it's almost like a mini assessment, which is great because the program is not inexpensive. And it's nice that Lindamood-Bell allows you to come in, see what the children are doing, and have a nice checkpoint each week. So the parents feel like they're getting a special look into the learning process that the children are experiencing as well, which is very important, I think. I think you have to decide what is important for your family. For my family, it was ridiculous for us to send our children to an expensive private school and to continue with each year when my children had missed some of the foundation for learning. So empirically speaking, when you think about, let's say you're learning at 100% each year, my children were probably learning at 50% each year. So you could pretty much discount what we were paying for our private school each year by how little they were learning. So by giving them a little bit of a push for 5 weeks, the return on our investment from school became much greater. We went from my children being way below grade on many different subjects and in many different categories to being well above grade. So I would even say that it gave them the push that they needed for success way into the future. So for me, that was an investment that I was willing to make, and it was a sacrifice. It's not necessarily an easy decision to make, but for my family and for my children, just the fact that they will now pick up books and read, that I find the returns on that are so much greater than if we had waited or tried to do something else, or if I had tried to home tutor or something, which I think the returns would not have been anywhere near what we found by doing this program. I really, as an economist, I think I went to University of Chicago. I think I could easily make an argument for that. And I've made an argument for that for many other families. We've already recommended 6 other families to come here. Mm-hmm. And we've had meetings at school about Lindamood-Bell. And because this is a solution, we didn't know that this existed. So by telling other people, I've had my friends have come and gotten themselves assessed. That should tell you. And now they believe in the process. You have to see it and go through it, I think, to understand and believe it.
Well, what was it like when you first came here, and what was kind of the vibe you got walking in the office?
When people say Lindamood-Bell, is it moody? Is it a bell? Is it a church bell? Is it a school bell? It's the name kind of, it makes it, you don't understand what is Lindamood-Bell. That's the big question that everyone asks. What is Lindamood-Bell? So when you first start talking about Lindamood-Bell, you have no concept. But what really sold it for us, and I'm sure has sold it for a lot of my friends now that we've recommended to come here, is the assessment. The assessment for me was one of the single most kind of revolutionary days in the lives of my children and I. When we sat down and looked at the assessment that my children had done, it was empowering because I finally understood that these are the gaps of knowledge that my children have. Lindamood-Bell is the bridge to be able to learn what they hadn't learned, to be able to acquire the new skills that they needed, and to be able to move forward and to have success. So our first day was actually coming in for the assessment. And a week later, we came back, received the assessment, and it crystallized everything that my husband and I had seen over the past, let's say, 2 years. We knew that there was a problem, but different problems. Each child had a different set of challenges, let's say.
How is that different than testing that was undoubtedly done at school?
We have had testing. My 3 children have had different testing at different facilities. One of my daughters was tested at Yale. Another one of my children was tested at an educational and learning testing and assessment center. Another one of my children was tested at a local university. And I think every testing organization has a different slant. I think one of the testing organizations that tested my son didn't necessarily offer any bridge. There was no connector. We got a report that said certain things. Some of them even included drugs. And we walked away kind of shaking our heads saying, we didn't believe the report. I think this was the problem. It was so severe and so extreme that did not reflect what we saw as parents. What happened with Lindamood-Bell, with that assessment, that was much more helpful to us because it broke the knowledge and the capacity for learning down into such interesting and easy to assess units that it made the challenge, breaking that down into easily accessible units made it easier for us to understand what the steps were going to be to overcome that Lindamood-Bell is very good at gaming. They understand how to game these problems in a way. I say game in a positive sense. They understand how to game something so that the child can have fun. They can learn what they need to learn and kind of slide under that knowledge barrier. I don't know how Lindamood-Bell does it. Sorry.
So it's not like gaming the system.
It's not like gaming the system.
Gaming, like economic, like gaming. Yeah.
Yes, it's gaming. It's gaming. So, okay.
So you didn't feel like the tests there were things that you saw change that were, say, beyond the metrics that were used to measure their decoding or their phonemic awareness or their comprehension?
What we took from the first Lindamood-Bell assessment to the second Lindamood-Bell assessment, which was 9 weeks later, was that by tweaking these skills that my children had but needed polishing, in the tweaking of those skills, my children went from being subpar readers to feeling comfortable enough with reading to relax and start really reading. And therefore, by polishing these skills, they polished the entire reading experience, and it allowed so much growth in the reading department for my children that they have now become voracious readers, and it continues to help them overcome these inefficiencies that they had before.
Were they frustrated themselves?
My children, we live in Fairfield County, and there's no frustration in Fairfield County because if you don't like what you're doing, you just stop doing it. Don't do it. It's okay. Relax. Take a break. No, my children are probably typical children for this region. They get frustrated. They do something else. And as a parent, we can't let this go. We can't say, you don't want to read? That's okay, Johnny, Janie. Don't read. Someone else will read for you. That can't happen. It's one of those skills that, whether you like it or not, you need to learn how to do it. You need to learn how to do it well because it's going to affect your entire lives. Because they've worked hard. Lindamood-Bell is not an easy program. They roll up their sleeves. My kids every day rolled up their sleeves. They worked really hard. The tutors and the trainers here are incredibly vigilant. They're incredibly hardworking and smart. What they do, which is very interesting to me, is they almost bedazzle the children. They make it so fun. They do it in increments that the children can handle it and learn from it. Then they do something that basically unseats the children by saying, let's run up and down the steps for 10 seconds. The kids run up and down the steps for 10 seconds, then they're ready to go again. It recalibrates them. They know, the trainers here know how to work with the children. So when I say my children were here for 5 hours today, that's not a typical classroom setting. They're not sitting at a desk. They're not staring at a blackboard. They are interactively learning and using their brains in a way that they probably would never do at a typical school setting. That's the key.
And what grades are they in?
I have twin girls. They are in the 5th grade. And I have an 8-year-old boy who's in the 1st grade now.
So what do you picture for their secondary education experience, high school and beyond?
What do I picture?
Do you feel like this has helped take away some of the, obviously you have more content being loaded every year. Is this going to help make that a little easier, do you think?
I think Lindamood-Bell took my children from being mid to lower level learners who were becoming a little bit frustrated, a little bit impatient with school, took them from that point to now being very excited about going to school, being very excited about reading, comprehending what they're reading, also being able to take better instruction from their teachers, which is also an important part that my children were missing. I think that we've already seen huge improvements in their grade level this year. So instantaneous results. And I think without this program, my children would have done fine. They would have been fine students. They would have been perfectly happy in their lives. But I think they would have missed a lot of key concepts. I think they would have missed a lot of beautiful books. I think they would have missed a lot of interaction with their teachers that they would not have had they done this program.
Your relationship with your school.
Yes.
And have you talked with them about that? This wasn't a case where you had, a lot of times we have parents that it's like, no, we're not waiting till the summer. It's November and we're struggling.
Right.
Not getting anywhere.
Well, I'm doing that for a child right now. We basically, we didn't adopt, but one of my child's best friends was struggling at school. So we brought her here to have her assessed. So we're sponsoring her. And she, for the next 5 weeks, she'll be here from 8 to 12 every day. So I had her parents talk to the school. They sat down with the school, and the school was actually quite helpful. They rearranged her schedule so that her important core classes, which she's having in the afternoons, they were in the morning. They've now switched them to the afternoons. So she comes here from 8 to 12, and then her father picks her up and takes her to school. So that the school has been great about working it in, because they also know that she does have, and she is in the 6th grade. So it's go time for her. It's so important for her to learn these things that she's been learning at Lindamood-Bell, because she's almost getting to a point where without this learning process that she's now encountering at Lindamood-Bell, it would be hard for her to move into the upper school. Because her problem was with following instructions. And starting in the 7th grade, it's all instruction. The teachers aren't spending as much one-on-one time with the students. So it's imperative that she do this program now.
That's great. So your children were more in seeing stars and not more for just the plain reading, decoding the words off the page as opposed to a comprehension work?
My children were, although I have twins, my younger child and one of the twins are actually twins. When they tested at Lindamood-Bell, their tests were exactly the same. So I have my older girl, needed help with decoding. That was her main problem. She reads at a 11th grade level, but if she comes to a word that she doesn't understand, she skips over it. But she's so strong in contextual reading, she can usually game the system and figure out probably what that word meant. But when she actually gets to the 11th grade, you can't really game as much anymore, because she would miss some pretty important concepts by doing that. My other two children, their inability to conceptualize words was really bringing their reading level down and their understanding of certain passages, unless the passage had my son's name in it. So if it was about Marco Polo, if the passage was about my children, then they would do very well. If it was about someone else, then, all bets were off.
So you talk about the progress updates. Some concerns are sometimes there's no guarantee, in terms of progress, et cetera, when you go into the consultation and they, give you that, all the paperwork and things to sign, et cetera. Can you talk a little bit about, I don't know, were you nervous at that point? And at what point did you say, oh man, this is like clicking for these guys?
I think, yes, there is always, when you know that something is going to cost you money, there is always a situation where you sit and think to yourself and wonder what is the result of this going to be? Teaching and learning does not always have measurable results immediately. So what you have to decide is, when you first get the assessment, the initial assessment from Lindamood-Bell, what does it say about your child? Is it believable? Do you have contextual clues when you're looking at that report? Does it make sense to you? Then know that you will be able to get into the classroom with your children once a week if you'd like. And weekly, you will see the results of what they're doing. You will see where they've come from. You'll see the actual books that they're using. You will see how far they've come in 1 week. And hopefully that will give you a little more security as far as your spend on this project. You need to decide as a parent, how far will you go to help your child? The weekly check-ins were very helpful to my husband and I. If you're concerned with Lindamood-Bell is the amount of money that it's going to cost you to help your child. One thing that I can tell you helped my husband and I is that we had weekly check-ins with the teachers, with our children. We came into Lindamood-Bell, we sat down, we saw exactly what our children were working on. And the counselors are good enough to be able to say, this is what Johnny was doing in the beginning of the week, and look what Johnny's doing now. That was very helpful to have this empirical evidence of exactly what our children were working on. It's not ephemeral. It's definitely very specific things that they're working on every day, 4 or 5 hours a day, or 2 hours a day, whatever your program is. So that was helpful to us to be able to actually see on a week-to-week basis. What was also interesting to us is about after 3 weeks of my children being into the program, the books that were sitting beside my children's beds were actually being cracked open without my husband and I actually saying anything. So although I don't think Lindamood-Bell is magical, I think for my family, it did create a spark of magic that we're hoping will continue to lead to a long love of reading.
You said earlier that it was magical.
I know. Damn it. Don't cut that part.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was nice meeting you guys.
Likewise. And thank you for listening. You can reach us at our website, lindamood-bell.com, or call us at 800-233-1819. You can also follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and X. We are Lindamood-Bell.